Thank you for joining me on this tutorial. I got this picture from Pinterest and simply converted it to a black and white monotone picture so that it'll be easy for us to see the values. I'm using a 2B graphite pencil to draw in the preliminary construction lines, but feel free to use any of your available pencils. Just draw in very lightly at the beginning stages. I've just drawn in a basic cranial structure and drew in horizontal and vertical lines to achieve the symmetry that is required for this front-facing face. The two horizontal lines designate where the eyebrows and the eyes are, and the two shorter horizontal lines indicate the position of the nose and of the mouth. The distance between the two eyes is about the same length as the length of one eye. And I simply use my pencil and really the tips of my finger to measure the distances. Use simple short straight lines to indicate the shape and the form of the two eyes, and also the creases on top of the upper eyelids. I start the nose from the inner corners of the eyebrows and draw the two sides of the nose bridge by following along the central vertical line. And I drop lines from the inner corners of the eyes to find the width of the nose. I look at the reference photo and draw in the basic shapes of the mouth, which is about a third or one half of the distance from the nose to the chin. I notice there are differences between the proportions I just drew in and the reference photo. So now I am adjusting the overall proportions according to the reference photo, because the average proportions are simply a guide or reference, so I can basically adjust the proportions as I see fit. And I recommend that you do the same. I think the initial construction stage for the head and facial proportion is the most important stage of a drawing. It serves as a foundation for everything else I'm going to do on the drawing later. So it makes sense for me to spend as much time as I want in the very initial stage. I usually don't draw this fast. In fact, this video has been sped up at least 3 times its original speed. And I'm not using tracing paper to just directly copy over the face that I see on the left. And I know for certain that even master portrait artists spend a long time to getting the facial construction and proportions right. So please be patient with yourself and your drawing. I'm also blocking in the overall shape or form of the hair around the face, and also blocking in the neck and her sweater, and indicate some of these more obvious shadows that I can see from the photo. These lines will help me in later stages when I start shading. Be careful not to draw an outline around the outer edges of the hair, because they are the most far away from the center of the face, which is my focal point. I plan not to draw too many details for the hair, so I just draw in a few lines to help me find the changes in the values. These are basically lines to indicate clumps of hair, and I do the same for the hair above the hairline on the top. The ears are barely visible, but they are there. So I'm drawing in some lines to help me with the shading later. When I'm satisfied with the overall proportion of the face and the portrait, I will start shading. I usually start shading from the darkest darks or the darkest tones or values. In this photo, the darkest values are found in her hair. And even in the hair, there's a variety of different kinds of darks. From the photo, I can see that even the highlights or the lightest values in the hair are darker than possibly the medium or the lightest parts of the skin tones. So that's why I've done an overall shading, even including the highlighted areas. Okay, drawing in the darkest areas darker so I won't lose them. Moving from the left side to the right side of the hair. I follow the same process of shading the patterns of light and dark, not going into any details except for a few clumps of the hair. And I want to blur the areas that are the farthest or the most further away from the center of the face. If I make the farthest edges of the hair too clear or too distinct, they will distract the viewer's attention from the center of the face. So I try to spend less time on the area such as hair that is farther away from the center of the face or the focal point. So where exactly is the center of the face or the focal point? Well, the focal point is the area in a drawing or painting you want your viewers to focus on. In a very simple portrait drawing like this, there are probably the facial features that express most of her emotions and feelings and attitudes. So they probably include the eyes, eyebrows, and the mouth. The center of the face also means the center from which we built this whole face. Remember the first construction lines we drew in the beginning? The two horizontal lines for the eyebrows and the eyes and the central vertical line that crosses them? Where these lines intersect, they create the center of the face. I started shading in the darkest areas of the skin tone under her chin and on her neck, following the general but a very good rule of thumb of starting to shade from the darker areas to the medium and then to the lighter areas. And if I have more time, I don't shade in the darkest values in one go. So I'm shading in the darkest areas on the face, but I know I can get a little darker with my other pencils. So this is only on the first pass of my shading. I'm just making sure that even the darkest values on the face cannot be darker than the darkest values in the hair. So that's why we shaded in the forms from darker areas to lighter areas. And I do the same even when I'm working in the skin tone areas. If you feel like you've learned something from this tutorial or you have simply enjoyed it, please click the like or thumbs up button. Your support means that I can continue to make more tutorials like this. And please consider subscribing to my channel. It will ensure that you will receive my latest videos. And please leave a comment or any suggestions or even questions that you may have about my tutorials in the space that's provided under the video. Thank you so much for your support. I'm still using my grade 2B graphite pencil, but to achieve the lighter shading that I want on the face, I hold the pencil very far away from the tip of the pencil. This will force my hand to relax its grip and use feather-light pressure as you're going across the face. To create darker shading, I use more force and or hold the pencil a little closer to the tip of the pencil. It may take you a while for you to practice and get used to this kind of shading. So practice as much and as often as you can. Another tip on shading is to keep the tip of the pencil as sharp as you can. That will create consistency in the values that you're shading.